Our topic today is obstructive uropathy and the renal stone diseases. Okay, so introduction. The obstructive lesions of the urinary tract, they can be due to various reasons. Okay, so what they do, they uh, expose the patient towards infection, different kinds of urinary tract infection, and also these obstructions can be due to stone formation. Now, two types of obstruction can be there. Obstruction can be unrelieved, acute obstruction, or obstruction can be partial. Obstruction can also be gradual or sudden. It can also be unilateral or bilateral. Okay, so whenever these obstruction leads to some permanent structural change in the kidney, leading to atrophy of the kidney, that is renal atrophy, we will call it hydronephrosis or obstructive uropathy. Now, these obstructions can occur at any level of the urinary tract, starting from the renal pelvis to the urethra, and it can be caused by different intrinsic lesions as well as extrinsic lesions of the ureter. Now, we will enumerate the causes of obstructive uropathy. So, the causes can be congenital. So, in congenital, we have posterior urethral valve, we have urethral strictures, we can also have meatal stenosis, we can have bladder neck obstruction, ureteropelvic junction narrowing or obstruction, and along with that there can be severe vesico-ureteric reflux. Now, these are the congenital causes. Next, we will come to the calculus of the stones. So, urinary calculi are another important cause. We will come to that discussion later in details. Next, we can have benign prostatic hypertrophy, that is benign increase in size and cellularity of the prostatic gland seen in male patients. And next, we can have tumors. So, the carcinoma, different types of tumors can cause urinary tract obstruction. One is carcinoma of prostate, another is carcinoma of the bladder. It can also be due to carcinoma of urethra, urethral carcinoma. It can be due to certain peritoneal tumors like retroperitoneal lymphoma, and it can also be due to carcinoma of cervix or uterus. Now then, coming to the inflammatory causes, it can be due to prostatitis, ureteritis, urethritis, also retroperitoneal fibrosis. Inside the ureter, I already discussed the causes can be intrinsic and extrinsic. The intrinsic causes can be slought papilla. It can also be due to some blood clot inside the ureter. And in case of pregnant patient, advanced pregnancy or the later stage of pregnancy can cause urinary obstruction. How? Because the gravid uterus will cause pressure over the urinary bladder and the ureter, causing obstruction. Okay, so then it can also be due to uterine prolapse and cystocele. And finally, there are certain functional disorders. So, in case of any neural injury or spinal cord injury, in case of stroke patients of cerebral stroke, hemiparesis or paraparesis, what we can see is there are certain neurological abnormalities due in the control system of the bladder, and it can also be seen in case of diabetic nephropathy. So in these cases, neurogenic bladder can be seen, and this type of obstruction is known as dysfunctional obstruction. Okay, so this is a diagram enumerating all the causes, all the main causes in different levels of the urinary tract. So first, coming to the pelvis. So what are the main causes of obstruction that are happening at the level of renal pelvis? These are the calculi, the tumors, and finally the ureteropelvic stricture, that is a congenital cause. Next, coming to the ureter. So the causes of obstruction in ureter can be divided into extrinsic and intrinsic causes. In case of intrinsic causes, we have calculi, tumors, and slought papilla. In case of extrinsic causes, we have tumors of the cervix or uterus. We can also have retroperitoneal fibrosis, Another important cause is pregnancy. Next, coming to the bladder. So the more important causes here are the tumor, calculi, and also dysfunctional obstruction, that is neurogenic bladder. And in case of prostate, we have benign prostatic hyperplasia, prostatic tumors, and prostatitis. Okay, now coming to hydronephrosis. So today there are multiple causes of obstructive uropathy, but today we will mainly highlight two important entities, that is the hydronephrosis and the renal stone diseases. So hydronephrosis, so this term is used to describe a situation where there is obstruction in the urinary tract leading to dilatation of the renal pelvis and the renal calyces, and this is associated with progressive atrophy of the renal cortex. Okay, and this will also lead to decrease in glomerular filtration rate. Now, whenever there is obstruction, it can be two types, complete or incomplete. So even with complete obstruction, at first the GFR does not decrease totally. Some amount of glomerular filtration rate is there, and because some amount of urine, they go back into the renal interstitium and also the perirenal spaces, which get drained through the veins and the lymphatics subsequently. Okay, so since this continuous filtration is happening, there is progressive dilatation. So what happens in case of acute obstruction is there will be absolute cessation of urine output. But whenever there is incomplete obstruction, urine output will not cease completely. There will be some amount of glomerular filtration rate, there will be some amount of urine output. So this will give the renal calyces and the renal pelvis some time for progressive dilatation, and also with time there will be atrophy. So due to obstruction there is a high pressure inside the pelvis, and this pressure will go back to the renal calyces. So first there will be atrophy of the tips of the cortical pyramids, then there will be absolute atrophy of the pyramids leading to cortical atrophy, but further when it progresses, there will be dysfunction of the medulla as well, causing a diminution of inner medullary blood flow. Okay, so what happens in the medulla is primarily in the earlier stage, the defects in the medulla, they are reversible, but they will further lead to medullary functional disturbances. So the initial functional alterations caused by the obstructions are seen mainly in the tubule, that is, and the collecting ducts. Okay, and this happens due to the impaired concentrating ability of the kidney. And in the beginning, if GFR is declining, it will be very minimal. Only in the late stage of the disease, that is the late stage of the hydronephrosis, we will see that there is remarkable decline in the glomerular filtration rate. And this obstruction will also lead to interstitial inflammation leading to interstitial fibrosis. Okay, so coming to the morphology of hydronephrosis, whenever the obstruction is sudden and complete, it leads to mild dilation of the pelvis and sometimes atrophy of the renal parenchyma. But whenever the obstruction is incomplete or subtotal or intermittent, so as I already discussed, this will lead to progressive dilation, giving rise to hydronephrosis. Now, depending on the level of urinary block, the degree and nature of morphological changes will vary, and it will affect the bladder first, then the ureter, then the renal pelvis. Okay. Now, what happens grossly? The kidney is slightly enlarged at the beginning, and finally, these are the earlier features. So, in the early stage, the kidney of hydronephrosis will be increased, and there will be simple dilation of the renal pelvis and the renal calyces. And in addition, there is a significant interstitial inflammation. Also, in addition to that, there can be infection. Okay, but after that, if this obstruction is not removed and if this obstruction is persisting chronically, so the chronic changes will be, there will be some tubular atrophy and progressive blunting of the renal pyramids, okay, and the pyramids will be cupped, and in very advanced stage of the disease, there will be absolute atrophy of the renal pyramid, giving rise to thinning of the cortex. Okay, and the kidney becomes transformed into this. If you can see this picture on the right side, the kidney becomes transformed into this thin-walled cystic structure having a diameter of 15 to 20 centimeter with striking parenchymal atrophy. So here we can see that the parenchyma is almost thin. Okay, the cortex is very thin, so this is thinning of cortex and parenchymal atrophy. Okay, so coming to the clinical features of hydronephrosis, the clinical features will vary according to the type of obstruction. So, so the type of obstruction can be different. So we will discuss the clinical feature separately accordingly. Okay, so in case of acute obstruction, there will be pain. The patient will suffer from pain due to distension of the collecting system and also due to distension of the renal capsule. And most of the early symptoms are produced due to the underlying cause. So if the underlying cause is some kind of obstruction like stone, so it will patient will present with pain, and the calculi lodged in the ureters may give rise to renal colic. Prostatic enlargement will give rise to bladder symptoms. Okay, so next coming to unilateral complete or partial hydronephrosis. So in this case, the obstruction is unilateral. So one-sided kidney is affected, but the kidney of the other side is working fine. So in this case, the patient may not have any complaint. The patient may remain silent for long periods because the unaffected kidney can maintain adequate renal function. Now, the sometimes existence is discovered as an incidental finding during imaging studies. So, in the early stage, for the first few weeks, these changes can be reversed into normal functioning kidney if the obstruction is removed. And ultrasonography is a useful modality to detect an unilateral obstruction. Okay, now coming to bilateral partial obstruction. So in this case, both the kidneys are somewhat affected. So in this case, the earliest manifestation will be inability of the kidney to concentrate the urine, resulting in polyuria and nocturia. Some patients will develop tubular acidosis, renal salt wasting, secondary renal calculi, chronic tubulointestinal nephritis with scarring and atrophy of the papilla and the medulla. Hypertension is common in this case. Now coming to complete bilateral obstruction. So in this case, both the kidneys are not being able to function. So in this case, there will be rapid onset of symptoms like oliguria and anuria, and this kind of a case is incompatible with survival if the obstruction is not removed early or immediately. Now, once relief is there, obstruction is relieved, there is sudden miraculous change, a sudden miraculous improvement in the patient, and post-obstruction, there will be this post-obstruction diuresis. So what happens is, once the obstruction is removed, patient, the urine output becomes markedly increased post-operative. So this urine output can be massive, with the kidney excreting large amount of urine that is often very low in, very rich in sodium chloride concentration. Okay, now coming to our next cause of obstructive uropathy, that is the renal stone. So there are mainly 4 types of renal calculi according to their incidence and prevalence. So mainly we see calcium stone in case of 70% of cases, and this calcium stone can be due to calcium oxalate, and at times calcium oxalate can be mixed with calcium phosphate. Next we have the triple stone or the struvite stones, which is magnesium ammonium phosphate, seen in case of 15% of cases. Next we have the uric acid stone, seen in 5 to 10% of cases. And finally we can have also cysteine stones, that is 1 to 2% of cases. So coming to the morphologic changes in the kidney, or how the stones will be there in the kidney. So this is just a general appearance. So what we see that in case of 80% of cases of renal stone disease, the stones are unilateral, and stones can be in various sites of kidney. It can be in the renal pelvis, it can be in the ureter, it can also be in the renal calyces or the bladder, depending on their site of formation. So whenever in renal pelvis, the stones they remain small, 2 to 3 millimeter in diameter, and they can be smooth, their contour can be smooth. Some stones can also have rough, ragged contours. In certain occasions, progressive accumulation of salt leads to development of branching structures inside the renal pelvis and the renal calyces. Now, this branching type of stones are known as staghorn stones or staghorn calculi. We will discuss and come to that later. What happens is this stone, because of their position in the renal pelvis and the renal calyces, they basically take the shape of the renal pelvis and the renal calyx, forming a staghorn pattern. Now, the most commonly encountered stone, calcium stones. So, calcium oxalate stones, calcium oxalate can be two types. It can be I will discuss it in the later slide. So, this is the calcium oxalate dihydrate and the calcium oxalate monohydrate. Okay. So, in case of 20% of cases, these are associated with increased calcium secretion. So, it is basically hyperuricosuric calcium nephrolithiasis, and this is with or without hypercalciuria. So, this mechanism of stone formation in this setting involves nucleation of the calcium oxalate by uric acid crystals. Okay, and these stones are seen in the collecting ducts. In 5% cases of calcium oxalate stones, this is seen in patient with hypercalcemia and hypercalciuria, and they occur in case of hyperparathyroidism, in case of some diffuse bone disease, sarcoidosis and hypercalcemic states. 5% of these stones are associated with hyperoxaluria. So, this can either be hereditary, primary, and it can also be acquired or secondary due to intestinal overabsorption of oxalates in patients with some intestinal disease. Now, another cause of calcium oxalate stone is hypercituria. It can be idiopathic, associated with acidosis and chronic diarrhea of unknown case, and in these cases calcium stones can be seen. And there is another disease called the idiopathic calcium stone disease, where no definite cause can be identified. These are the calcium oxalate crystals. So, the calcium, that is, we are seeing that in radiological findings, but in pathology we are finding these crystals in the urine microscopy. So, crystals are a very important entity that is regularly reported in urine microscopy, and whenever there is calcium oxalate stone, we are expected to find calcium oxalate crystals in urine. So, the two types of crystals are calcium oxalate dihydrate and calcium oxalate monohydrate. Now, the calcium oxalate dihydrate crystals have this typical enveloped shape. Okay, and this is very commonly seen in urine. So, normally this crystal can be present. So, just presence of calcium oxalate crystal is not an abnormal finding, because calcium oxalate is a normal constituent of urine. What happens is, whenever the amount of crystal formation or the stone formation increases, it becomes an abnormal phenomenon. Now, this is the calcium oxalate monohydrate crystal. It can be dumbbell shaped, ovoid or long needle like. This is a urine, this is a picture of urine weight mount where a field is full of calcium oxalate crystals. Okay, now coming to the triple phosphate or struvite stone or the magnesium ammonium phosphate stone. Now it is formed mainly due to infection by Proteus, which is a urea splitting bacteria. So what does Proteus do? It breaks down the urea to form ammonia. Some staphylococcal will also do the same, break down the urea into ammonia. So these stones are seen in alkaline urine, and in alkaline urine there will be precipitation of these magnesium ammonium phosphate salts. So they will form one of the largest stones, and as I already discussed, these stones will take the shape of the renal pelvis and the renal calyces, forming staghorn calculi. So this is the picture of a staghorn calculi. Here we can see the dilated renal pelvic calyceal system, and this whole part is basically a stone. It is completely occupying the renal pelvis. Okay, and since renal pelvis is completely occupied by this stone, there will be absolute obstruction in urine outflow, giving rise to atrophy of the renal cortex. Okay, so these are the in urine microscopy, that stone, that staghorn calculi, we will see in radiology, and in pathology in urine microscopy we will see the triple phosphate crystals. So basically they have this coffin lid shape. Okay, so they are seen in alkaline pH of urine, and they are caused by bacteriuria. So whenever there is any kind of Proteus or Staphylococci infection, we can suspect presence of this stone. They can also be prism shaped. Next is uric acid stone. These are common in individuals with hyperuricemia, and whenever there is increased cell turnover, uric acid concentration in blood goes up, and this can be seen in conditions like any malignancy, any tumor, or it can also be seen in conditions like gouty arthritis. So more than half of all the patients with uric acid calculi then actually don't get hyperuricemia or increased level of uric acid in blood in routine tests, but directly present with uric acid stone due to increased concentration of urine or decreased hydration. So the tendency to excrete urine of pH, whenever the pH of urine becomes acidic and goes below 5.5, the chance of uric acid stone formation increases. So in contrast to the radiopaque calcium stones, which are easily detected in radiology, uric acid stones are radiolucent. So these are the different shapes of uric acid crystals found in routine urine microscopy. This is diamond shape, barrel shape, they can also be rosette shaped, and whenever we are seeing this in under polarized lens, they can be orange brown or they can also be of yellow color. Now finally coming to the cystine stones, these are caused by the genetic defects in the renal reabsorption of amino acids including cysteine, leading to cystinuria, and these stones are also formed at low urinary pH. So these are the cystine crystals in urine, and these crystals are typically hexagonal. They take the shape of a hexagonal plate, and they are colorless. Now, a brief discussion on the factors that can favor stone formation. So, one important factor is increased urinary concentration and concentration of the particular constituent of the stone. So, say for example, in case of calcium oxalate. So, whenever the concentration of calcium oxalate salt in urine increases and exceeds its threshold for solubility, and whenever the urine becomes a supersaturated solution of that particular salt, so that salt will tend to form a crystal. So increased level of calcium oxalate will cause calcium oxalate stone, and increased level of calcium phosphate will cause calcium phosphate stone. So another important cause is low urine volume. In certain metabolically normal patient where the normal calcium level in blood, it is not exceeding the normal range, but still we can see calcium stones, that is due to their decreased urine output. And it can also be due to the increased concentration of stone constituents, changes in the urinary pH, as we saw that certain stones are more formed in the urinary pH of in the acidic urinary pH, and certain stones are more prone to be formed in the alkaline urinary pH. Now, also presence of bacteria like Proteus and Staphylococci will influence formation of stone. And it is also enhanced by deficiency of inhibitors of crystal formation in urine such as pyrophosphate, diphosphonate, citrate, glycosaminoglycans, osteopontin, glycoprotein called nephrocalcin. So these are the natural inhibitors of stone formation in urine. So whenever they are decreased in urine or decreased in body, stone formation will increase. So coming to the clinical features, urinary stone can present with severe renal colic and abdominal pain, and it can cause severe renal damage as well. Sometimes if the stone is present in the lower urinary tract, it can present with hematuria, and they also predispose the patient to superimposed infection, and in case of urinary tract infection, the patient will present with fever with chill. Now the lab diagnosis. So in the pathological perspective of lab diagnosis is urine microscopy. In urine microscopy, we can see two types of urine crystals. So one can be the normal crystals and one can be the abnormal crystals. The normal crystals are the crystals that are composed of substances that are normally present in urine, and the abnormal crystals, the crystals that are composed of substances which are not present normally in urine. So whenever we are finding some of these abnormal crystals, we also have to look at other biochemical test results before reporting it, because we cannot report an abnormal crystal just on the basis of urine microscopy. Now, the different types of normal crystals that are present in acidic urine. So, among the normal crystals, it can be categorized into those present in an acidic pH and those present in an alkaline pH. So, in acidic pH, we can see uric acid crystal, calcium oxalate crystal and amorphous uretes. And in alkaline pH, we can see the calcium carbonate crystals, the different types of phosphate crystals. So, among them, there is the calcium phosphate, there is the triple phosphate, and then there is the amorphous phosphate. And finally, in alkaline pH, we can also see ammonium urate crystals. Now, among this, I have already shown you the picture of calcium oxalate crystal, uric acid crystal, triple phosphate crystal. So now I will show the picture of calcium carbonate crystals. So here these crystals are, some of them are dumbbell shaped and some of them are round. Next, coming to the ammonium urate crystals or the biurate crystal. So these crystals have these brownish yellow color, and they are basically spherical bodies and they have this thorn apple appearance. Now coming to the different amorphous precipitations in urine. So other than crystals, we can have this amorphous precipitation, and in case of acidic urine, we will see amorphous uretes, and in case of alkaline urine, we will see amorphous phosphates. So the amorphous uretes will be brownish red or a brick red color, and that's why they are called brick dust sediment. And in alkaline urine, we are seeing the amorphous phosphate. So they have this grey-white color, and they are formed by tricalcium and trimagnesium phosphate. And these phosphate are easily dissolved in urine when we add acetic acid to it. Okay, now coming to the abnormal crystals, you don't need to know the details. All you need to know is the names of these abnormal crystals. So they can be cystine crystal, cholesterol crystals, bilirubin crystal, leucine crystal, tyrosine crystal and sulfonamide crystals. So they are some of them like the cysteine, cholesterol, bilirubin, leucine and tyrosine, they are caused by abnormal metabolism of these substances in our body, and the sulfonamide crystals are caused by exposure to certain drugs. Now this is a picture that kind of summarizes all the shapes of different crystals. So on the top we have all the normal crystals. So this is, I already showed you the envelope shape. This is the calcium oxalate crystal. This is the coffin lid shape. Okay, so this is the triple phosphate crystal. Next comes to the this is the rhomboid or the square shape. These are of uric acid crystal. Then these are the amorphous precipitates. So this one is the amorphous phosphate, and this is the amorphous urate, since it has this brick brown color. And these are the ammonium urate apple thorn appearance, ammonium urate crystal. And among the abnormal crystals, first I already showed you the cysteine crystals. They have this hexagonal plate-like appearance. So that is the cysteine crystal. Then is the cholesterol crystal. So basically they are square plates where the corners are broken or the corners are chipped. So that is the shape of a cholesterol crystal. Next is the bilirubin crystal. They are yellowish and they are needle-like appearance. And these are the tyrosine crystals, bunch of needle-like appearance. Same for the sulfonamide crystal. And the leucine crystal will have this round spherical appearance with concentric rings.